From Super League to Olympic distance to age group world records to color. Go longer with the right fuel at the right time with S-Fuels.
Spread a little aloha around the world at breakfast with Bob.
Thank you, Poncho Man. Welcome, everybody. Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you by Master Spas, S-Fuels Go Longer, Hoka Let's Fly, Form Smart Swim Goggles, Zoot, the original triathlon brand, Premium Plus Sports, Quintana Roo, Mission Pacific Hotel, where we'll be during Oceanside 70.3. And our Challenged Athletes Foundation, we've now raised over $147 million to keep challenged athletes in the game of life through sport. Our next guest only has the best name in the sport of triathlon, Mr. Chase McQueen. That just sounds fast. How you doing, Chase?
Good, yeah. How are you doing, Bob? I appreciate you having me on the show.
You know what? It's an honor. I love the fact that you're heading up to do arena games up in Montreal. Are you excited about that?
I am excited. Yeah, Super League is a very enjoyable experience. So I'm definitely looking forward to starting the season in Montreal in a couple weeks.
Well, you've got Lionel Sanders coming. You got Jackson Laundry coming. So there's this great mix of, super fast, super short distance folks, and then your long distance guys. I'm guessing that must be appealing as well.
Yeah, I mean, the more people that are going to be competitive, I think the better. It's a great time in the sport for triathlon. So I'm really looking forward to racing some of the best guys in long course, and they're stepping down in distance, and we'll see how they go. But I'm really excited to see how things are against them.
So you're one of our younger guys in the sport. What are you, 24, something like that?
Yeah,
so 24. What did you grow up as? Swimming was number one?
Yep, swimming is my background, and then I got into triathlon in the junior years, I guess, around 15 or 16, and raced, like the junior series that we have for draft legal in the U.S. I ended up going to the University of Arizona to run collegiately, and after that, I did that for 2 years, and then I transferred to the USA Triathlon Project Podium. It's like a development group in Phoenix, Arizona for draft legal, just because we didn't have a very good pipeline for short course athletes. So USAT has been very supportive, and I've since graduated from that, and I live in Boulder, Colorado. So I'm enjoying the cold weather right now.
It's interesting with from the women's side, it seemed we could identify a Gwen Jorgensen, a Katie Zafaras out of college, right? Gwen was swam and ran at Wisconsin, and basically I identified 2010, teach her how to ride a bike, how to clip in, and that 2 years later, she's on the Olympic team. 4 years after that, or 2 years after that, she's 4 years after that, she's winning a gold medal. Katie comes from steeplechase and ends up making our Olympic team 4 years later after getting identified. On the guy side, it's a lot different, right? You can't just take somebody out of college who swam and ran and say, okay, we're going to teach you to ride a bike. Why is it so different?
Oh man, that's a tough question. Yeah, I don't know why it's necessarily different. It's really hard, just like you said, competing at the guys elite level in World Series it's just so competitive. You have to be so well-rounded. The girls, obviously they're amazing and they're so talented and they're so successful. And the US guys, we have to kind of figure out a way to pull our weight. We got to catch up to them. Even my partner, who I think you spoke to yesterday, Gina, she came through the CRP and she's been super successful. And, it's really exciting to see her development, but yeah, it's really tough as a guy, and we got to figure out how to be more competitive on world stage.
What's fascinating is when I look back and I look from the guy side, Alistair Brownlee, Javi Gomez, all those guys started when they're so young. And so for our guys to come in as coming in out of college, there's just no way. You can't compete with guys who've been doing this for a decade, who have all that background of racing and training. And I think what we learn is they swim and run just as well as the guys who are coming from their collegiate swimming and running background.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have guys like, Matt McElroy and Morgan Pearson. Those guys have been successful coming out of running. But those guys are once in a generation talents, and it really does take a lot of development. And I'm super thankful for USA Triathlon and how much they've invested in me, because it's been a long process. And it's still going, and I still have a long ways to go. So
your first WTCS race was Leeds 2021.
Yeah.
And you were still part of Podium Project at that Project Podium at that time. You lead the swim, the first buoy. You got Alistair Brownlee, Richard Varga, Aaron Royal. It's like you jump into a Hall of Fame race as your first one. That had to be, as you're swimming along, looking, you know who these guys are. When you're swimming along, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that was an amazing experience for me. I can just remember vividly standing on the pontoon, getting ready to dive in, and I'm looking to the left of me and looking to the right of me, and it's guys that I've been watching for my entire career, since I've been growing up. And I think, part of that swim was I swam super well because I was so nervous, and I thought that I was going to have to swim so fast. And, I got out really fast, but it kind of cost me probably towards the end of the race a little bit. But yeah, I mean, an experience I'll never forget. And a lot of those guys now, unfortunately to say, like I'm friends with those guys. I've developed relationships with those guys, and they've really been good to me. So it's been an amazing journey.
What's fascinating to me with when you're racing at that level, I think triathlon is different from pro cycling or some of the other sports, because you can still be buddies and train with the guys and go on race day. Because on race day, it's you against the course, you against yourself. It's obviously, if it comes down to the last 100 yards and somebody's next to you, you're racing them. But do you find that there can still be camaraderie and friendships, even though you have to kick the other guy's ass on race day?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's one thing that I appreciate about Super League so much is I raced the championship series last year, and they call it the traveling triathlon circus, but it really is. We travel all around the world. We're all together. We're all staying in the same hotels and, doing things together, eating all our meals together. And that's part of the reason I love triathlon, is because the relationships that you can create and the friendships that you can make, it's unparalleled to anything else. It's such a unique experience. But then when you get on the race course, obviously it's every man for themselves. And you're trying to beat everybody you can. But then at the end of the day, it's like you finish the race and, you can kick it with some guys and just hang out.
So Chase, is the goal for this season, obviously Paris, the test event is coming up. Is that what the focus will be on?
Yeah. I think like the A races for the year, you would say, would be the test event and then the world champs in Pontevedra. But greater scope than that, I think it's just like continuing to develop as a triathlete, still 24 years old. So kind of work on some things that, I know are going to be beneficial in the long term. Really continue to develop my run as one specific thing, but just enjoy the sport. I think there's so much that it has to offer, and just kind of soak it all in while I'm enjoying this lifestyle.
So you, in that first ever race in Leeds, you got, I think, 24th, something like that. And then, what's cool is you're in the mix, right? You're riding with these guys and got a feel for it. And then was it right after that you did the mixed relay in Montreal?
Yeah, it was right after that. And that, I think, goes to show just how much, just a little bit of confidence can go, that it goes a long way. And I think, there's so many people in the US and internationally that are super talented, and they have what it takes to be really competitive on the global stage, but they just need that confidence booster. They need that breakthrough to kind of set themselves up. And that, that Leeds race, that was that for me. And in Montreal, I think I carried a lot of confidence, and luckily, it panned out in a good way for me and the team.
Good way. You guys win a gold. Seth Ryder, Taylor Spivey, Kristen Casper, and you were anchor, right?
I was, yeah. To be honest, those guys, set me up super well. And I look up to all of them. I've trained with a lot of them. I'm teammates with Kirsten right now. But I went into that race just thinking, I can't let these guys down. I have a lot of expectation on me because I don't want to let these guys down. And, I carried that with me in the race.
That's how you think about it. There's having pressure on yourself and going, okay, I'm having a bad day. When you've got three other people and they've already busted their ass to get you where the position you're in, that is the most pressure, because now you got to bring it home.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's what makes it so, the relay so much fun and so exciting for athletes is we get to compete as a team. And, triathlon's traditionally such an individual sport, and we don't really get to enjoy that. And I think that camaraderie that you get from, having to rely on your teammates and them counting on you, that whole thing is really exciting.
So who are you training with now?
My coach, his name is Nate Wilson, and he lives in Boulder. Yeah, coaches like Kevin McDowell, Flora Duffy, Kirsten Casper, Valerie Bartholomew. It's a small group, but it's really competitive, and it's really good friendships, good camaraderie amongst all of us. So it's a healthy environment, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
How tough was it to adjust to training at altitude?
Well, I'm still adjusting actually. So I just moved here like a month ago. It's been I've spent some time in Boulder in the summers before, just for camps and various sort of things, but I've never really lived at altitude for this long. So it has been an adjustment. It's hard, and you got to adjust your heart rate zones and wattage zones and all that stuff, because it's no joke.
So for this year, obviously the goal is to get to the Olympics. Will you also mix in some other super leagues throughout the season?
Yeah, I'm planning on racing, obviously, Montreal. I'm going to plan on racing the final in London for the Arena Games. And then I'm planning on racing the whole championship series. It kind of just depends, on how the season goes. One thing for me is I've at this point now, I've had two or so years of racing World Series, and I've gotten a lot of good experience at that level. But, I've kind of just been hovering in that 20 to 25th position. And I really want to take the next step. So I'm trying to get some better experience racing at the front of races, I'm going to mix in some World Cups and try to be more competitive there.
Right.
But I want to just, at this point, it's not about just getting experience. It's about really being competitive and sticking my nose in the front of the races.
Do you see after Paris, do you move up potentially and think about 70.3 PTO? This is actually probably the greatest era in the history of triathlon for a pro, because there's so many great options. You've got the World Championship Series, you got Super League, PTO, Ironman, 70.3. There's a lot of different ways you can go.
Yeah, Clash, Challenge, all those.
Exactly.
I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yep.
I see myself eventually getting into long course. I think, like we've seen a lot of short course racers do, kind of just dabble in it at first. I've never really done a long course race, so I'm definitely excited to try that at some point. I'm really focused on trying to get through this Olympic cycle, and then LA is still super intriguing to me as well. I think that's a good year for me. But
you're still young by LA.
Yeah. So I think I still want to be around for LA, but with the PTO and with Challenge and Clash and all these, even Ironman, all these races, I really want to try to get some experience in that. And hopefully that'll be, pretty soon.
So when you look at in terms of World Championship Series this last year, 28th in the finals, 37th Bermuda, 22nd Cagliari, and 12th Ponte Verde, and 30th in Hamburg, and that was a sprint. Were there, in terms of those races, take me through which of those races you feel, okay, this is where I'm at, and this is what I could have done to move up 10 spots. Because I mean, we're talking seconds between you could have been 10th or 30th. It's every second someone's coming across the line, you miss a transition, you screw up here or there, and all of a sudden you're it's double digits.
Yeah, it's crazy. Honestly, I think one of the hardest things racing at this level is just being consistent. And that's something that I've really had to learn, when you mix in all the travel and the lack of training and the time zone changes and all this stuff, you're racing so much that it's really hard to just, be fit all the time and be consistent. Right. And I've kind of grown in admiration for, the guys like Javi and Alistair and Vince, and these guys that can be consistent just all the time. It's so impressive. It's really amazing. And I think for me, in terms of specific races last year, I had a lot of ups and downs, but I was really proud of the last race in Abu Dhabi. I was in the breakaway I had a really good swim, really good bike, and I ran decent off of a hard bike. I know, like, I finished 28th. It doesn't necessarily look like that amazing result on paper, but I was really proud of how I like stuck my nose in it. And, if I can run, instead of running 32 flat, if I can run 31 flat or 30-30, somewhere in there, I'm getting in the mix. And I think Pontevedra was another one. Like, I had a really good, I ran a 30-45 there, but it's just a matter of like mixing having the best day on swim, bike, and run, and not just two of the three, because any little weakness is going to get exposed pretty quick.
It's always interesting because when I ask people what, greatest race, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the one they won. And it's usually something like you just talked about Abu Dhabi. That's a world championship. And you didn't have any trepidation about going to the lead. There's a lot of folks who will see it at Ironman, right? They ride their way up to, they're way off the back in the swim. They ride their way up to 18th and they run away up to 11th, something like that. But it never changes. They do the same thing every year. You keep thinking, but then you see someone who's not afraid to put their nose at the front. And that's where the breakthroughs happen. That's when you find out, okay, if I'm running this pace, this guy's hurting too. He's hurting just as much as I do, rather than you're looking at Brownlee thinking, he's not even sweating. What's going on with this? Right?
Yeah.
Where you're able now to look at it and go, okay, if he's here and I'm there, we're both suffering. Who wants it more?
Exactly. And I think that's why I and a lot of other people admire Alistair Brownlee so much, is because he raced, with his heart on his sleeve every time he raced. You could always expect him to be going as hard as he possibly could all the time. And I want to race like that. I want to not be scared of going to the well and blowing up. I want to like be aggressive, be at the front of the race, and just try to survive. And at the end of the day, I can live with the result because I know I got everything out of myself.
We watched a few different times as this young man named Magnus Dietliff would go to the front and blow to the moon during he missed his nutrition, whatever. But you knew he was going to be great because he wasn't afraid of the moment and wasn't afraid of the spotlight. And that's really what it takes to be great.
Yeah. I mean, I admire that so much. I can remember watching him. I think it was maybe Challenge Daytona or Clash Daytona a couple of years ago, where he was just off the front. You could see it. It's like, this guy's so talented. He has all the tools and he's just got to keep chipping away, and eventually it's going to pay off. And now look at him, he's one of the best guys in the world.
Well, and at that point he's like 21 or something and wasn't afraid to, okay, there's $1 million at stake. So what? I'm going for it. That's
exactly.
It's very cool. What when you look at all these, you guys get to travel to some pretty cool places: Bermuda, Abu Dhabi, Ponte Verde. What are some of your favorite places?
Honestly, this is going to sound weird, but I love racing in the US just because we don't get to race in the US a lot, and everything's just so easy and comfortable here. But in terms of traveling, I think, I loved racing in Spain. I love racing anywhere in Europe. I think triathlon is so big in Europe. Some of my best experiences in triathlon were in Super League last year, racing in Toulouse in the championship series. That's the craziest race I've ever been a part of. It was the biggest crowd. I mean, all these people, just normal people off the street were like there watching a triathlon, which, then you go to a place like Malibu and, we just don't get that same camaraderie around triathlon, which hopefully will change in the future. But anywhere in Europe, obviously Bermuda was really cool. Abu Dhabi was a unique experience. There's so many cool places, and triathlon's taken me to a lot of amazing places. So I'm very thankful for that.
What's nice about you go to a place like Toulouse, when you can bring the sport into a downtown area where there's big crowds that are there anyways, right? They just happen to be out, or you're down by the beach. You're like, okay, this is really cool. And then they get exposed to the sport, where you can't really do that with a longer distance race, but something where you're not taking up a lot of roads. You can have a bit, and then all those people go home and they've just seen a sport they probably have never seen before.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what Super League does such a good job of, is just capturing, the attention of people that don't really understand the sport. They just, we have these really short tracks. We're racing like 1 kilometer loops on the bike, and people can almost see the race the entire time. 90% of the race they can actually see. And I think that's super exciting. It's exhilarating. And I think it creates drama for the race that's happening. And I think a lot of spectators can get behind that sort of thing.
And you mentioned you're running and trying to get to that 30-30 point, or low 30s. How hard is that to make? It's funny. People go, okay, well, you run a 32, you drop to a 31. Just going from a 32 to a 31 is brutal. Like that takes a long time. People don't understand that process of trying to drop 1 minute from a 10K and taking X amount off per mile is really brutal.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. It's been a work in progress, and I still have a long way to go. Even if you look at my race results last year, it's like one race I'd be running 30, 40, and the next race I'd be running 35, and then the next race I'd be running 32. It's just like that consistency is really hard to capture, and I think it's a work in progress for me, and I just got to keep. Luckily, I have a really good coach, and I think we're doing all the right things, and it's just I got to get to that point, because the sport is evolving so much that when you have guys like Alex He and Morgan and Hayden, and they're running low 29s, it's like if you want to be competitive, you got to figure out a way to get faster.
Well, the nice thing you have going is you're up there at the lead out of the water. Being there is, if you're further back, it's really difficult to bridge. So you've got that going right away. How important is it to work on the cycling so that you're able? It's almost like a crit when you guys are racing on the bike. You can't just you have to really be surging throughout that race to make sure you're not getting caught by the guys who are running 29 minutes off the bike.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that a lot of people underestimate is how hard the bike is. It's definitely changed a lot in the past couple of years.
Yep.
And it is really hard. And to be able to run well off of that, you got to be really strong on the bike. So I think that's something that I'm really working on is kind of, okay, can I ride a 40K really hard and still come off of it feeling fresh and like ready to run a fast 10K, because that's going to make a big difference for me. If it's just a big pack and everybody's running fresh, obviously everybody's going to be able to run faster. But when you can have a breakaway and you're riding hard, I got to be able to run fast off of that. So it helps to have that advantage, but you got to be able to capitalize on it as well.
So when I watch Super League, you transition like every 2 minutes. I'm guessing that all the different transitions you do in those races makes a difference when you go do the World Tri Championship Series.
Yeah. I think Super League, it's so fast paced, it's so aggressive. Every decision that you make has to be very instinctual, and a lot of people make mistakes. I think I did as well, but you're just thinking so fast on your feet that sometimes you forget the simplest things. Like I remember last year when we were racing, running into the water after a bike transition, and Johnny Brownlee had his helmet on next to me, and I was like, oh man, dude, what are you doing? But it's just things like that. It's just like you can't even blame him, because things are happening so quickly that it's really hard to focus. And I think that's why I raced Super League. I wanted to get that experience, because then when you transition to World Series racing and 20K and 40K bike or Olympic and sprint distance, you're like, everything slows down so much. And in 2021 for me, when I was racing in the series, and I was big wide-eyed looking at everybody that I've looked up to for so long, like the race was just so fast for me, and I felt like I didn't belong there. And since racing Super League and getting some more experience, the race has slowed down for me a little bit, and I feel more comfortable, and I feel like I belong to race at those high level races.
How different is it doing the arena games? Because you're running on a different type of treadmill than you probably normally run, right? Because you have to generate your own energy from it. And it's different, right? It's just a different format. It's still triathlon, but it's so unique.
Yeah, it is really unique. It's really, really tough. And I think, you see a lot of pain faces because everybody's hurting so much. I remember last year, I showed up in Munich, first arena games, and I had no idea what to expect. And it was one of the hardest races I've ever done, for sure. And then I raced in Singapore at the final, and it was outside, and it was super hot and humid. And it's just like so tough. Everybody's so tired after the bike. And then you get on that treadmill and you got to try to figure out how to run a 3-minute K or 250K. And it's like, everybody's just surviving at that point. Heart rate is through the roof. And then, you like don't get a break and you have to go into another round and, you don't get to recover at all. It's really ruthless. It's absolutely savage. It's crazy.
I remember being at Malibu last year, and they were doing, it was like a 300 swim, 3 mile bike, 1 mile run, and then
Yeah.
the clock starts as soon as the first guy finishes. It's like what, 4 minutes until the next heat. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
you finished 2 minutes back, you're screwed. How do you
Yeah.
do that?
And then you gotta set up your transition, and then you
Yes.
gotta get your goggles back on and try to get down to the beach. Yeah, Super League's a different animal, and I think that's why I love it so much, is because it challenges me in a way that I've never been challenged. It's really so hard.
And when you guys are traveling and like in your own little bubble and going from city to city, like you said, it's the Super League circus.
Yeah,
That's almost like a professional ball player, right? You're almost like you're playing on a basketball team or something, because you're with everybody. Everybody's
yeah,
going from city to city to city. That has to be pretty unique, but also it's so different.
yeah, yeah. It's got its I think pros and cons, right? Like it's so cool because you're traveling with this group. You feel like you're part of a team, which you are part of a team.
You
It's
are,
it's
yes.
really fun. But then on the negative side, I guess you're kind of in this bubble. You can't really get out of the bubble if you need to get some space. Sickness is always present.
Yeah.
There's like things flying around. It's just it's busy all the time. The time zones, you're trying to figure out, new places to train and new environments. So there's a lot of overwhelming features of it, but I think the pros outweigh the cons. It's so exciting, and it's really fun.
Well, and you've obviously, Montreal's a good city for you. That's where you had your mixed relay, right? That was it. You guys took the gold there. So Montreal coming up in a couple of weeks, you're going to be back there looking for another gold.
Yeah, yeah, I'm really excited to be racing in Montreal. I think anywhere in North America just feels really comfortable for me, and it's an easy flight from Denver. So, really looking forward to going there and racing. And honestly, the arena games are really cool because my background comes from pool swimming, so I love pool swimming. I think hopefully it gives me a leg up in the race. We'll see, but yeah, really excited just to be racing again this year. It's been kind of a short off season, but to be honest,
Yes.
I'm ready to go.
And it's sort of cool with, obviously everybody lost a year for the last Olympic cycle, but it makes it cool that it's only a 3 year cycle. So it's like right away, people are back into getting points and trying to get there.
Yeah.
During the season, will you spend, since so many of the races are in Europe, do you live in Europe then for most of the summer?
So for me this year, I'm going to be try to be in Boulder as much as I can. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Just because it does make a difference being in an environment where you're really comfortable. And for like before the test event, I'll try to be in Europe for a few weeks to try to get comfortable in the time zone. But yeah, when you have like a race and then you have 2 weeks and then a race, it's like it makes sense to stay in Europe. So I'll do that. But if you have more than 2 or 3 weeks, then you would probably want to come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get the benefit of altitude, be with your coach,
Yeah.
analyze. So does your coach give you workouts every day, or you plan out the whole week? And how do you adapt to that when you're maybe feeling a little tired or you got a little niggle?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, so Nate, he does a great job of adjusting and adapting as we need. And luckily I'm fortunate enough to be in a group that's so encouraging and so positive that, they always bring out the best of me. And I think I'm always excited to wake up in the morning and train. And for me, Nate, he gives me like a week's worth of training, and he'll be at a lot of the key sessions. And then some sessions are on your own just to give you like a little bit of space and peace of mind if you want to sleep in or do things on your own schedule. But he's at the key sessions, and if we need to adjust anything or adapt anything, he's super good about that.
Hey, Chase, thanks so much for taking time, man. I love catching up with the next generation. I can't wait to
Yeah,
see what you guys do.
no problem, Bob. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. Like I said in the email to you, it's an honor and a privilege. I grew up watching your show in Hawaii, and then I think actually I was trying to think about a couple of years ago. We were at it was the USAT Foundation Hall of Fame, and I think you were inducting the Hoyt, Dick Hoyt, and
Yes.
yeah. So I met you there, and then I met you in Malibu last year. But yeah, honestly, it's such an honor and a privilege to be on the show, and I really appreciate it.
Well, anytime someone's got a name like Chase McQueen, man, we know You're going to be a factor for years to come. I love to see it. Have fun in Montreal.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yep. Enjoy the rest of
McQueen
the
has
day.
been our guest, everybody. Again, Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. Catch us next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. See ya.